the session's being recorded. So after 45 minutes, you're free to speak unrecorded if you choose to speak unrecorded. So anything that is said now is on the record, and anything after that is off the record. We also are of the opinion that that there is in this world a kind of war of propaganda going on all sides. That information is never neutral, and so we consider that we're contributing to one side essentially. You can call it propaganda, or you could call it counter-propaganda. Who started it? So it's we're very, very keen to analyze certain narratives that are coming out in the media as if we were analyzing the structures of a play, looking at their dramaturgy. What is the message? What are people trying to communicate with this? So as indicated in the SCUD announcement, we are going to begin with actuality. What has actually just come out, because this is an unfolding situation. And I am a Guardian reader. Sometimes I am a little bit irritated at the Guardian, but I do read it every day. And I read the comments of General Richard Dannett, who has just come off a Sky TV interview. And this is the nature of the kind of rhetoric that we're curious about. He says, the sad reality is that at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future, there will be some form of general ceasefire, and the war will stop where it is. The Russians won't leave it of their own free accord. They won't leave of their own free accord. And no one is going to throw them out. NATO and the West is not going to mount an Iraq-style operation to throw out the Russians from Ukraine in the same way that Saddam Hussein was thrown out of Kuwait. This just isn't going to happen. So there may have to be the realization of an awful new status quo that where 10 to 15% of Ukraine is occupied by the Russians, and there's nothing that can be done about it. All right, so this is the kind of rhetoric that I, as a non-Ukrainian consumer of sort of generally liberal commentary, I feel kind of depressed after I read that. I think, oh God, nothing we can do. Those Russians are so powerful, And there's this kind of weird messaging that it's both a sad reality and it's hopeful. Okay, it's both sad and hopeful. So that has to be unpacked as well. Why is it sad and why is it hopeful that there's going to be a ceasefire? And there's nothing, and then the awful status quo that nothing can be done about. It's awful, but nothing can be done. Okay, so this is a kind of really complex narrative, and we'd really like to look at it as a kind of dysfunctional tragic form, where we are involved. We're watching scenes, that evoke pity and terror. But instead of the narrative being constructed in such a way that we walk away with a kind of moral, if you will, we're walking away with something which is the opposite of a moral. It's very degenerate. It leads us to essentially a kind of feeling of humiliation. We, the West, can't stick up for our allies. We can't do it. Our democracies are fundamentally flawed, just sort of hopeless. Ukrainians, really, there's a sort of sense, Russia's stronger, Ukraine is brave but helpless, and that we, the West, are just sort of feckless. Basically, we're not going to do anything like we might have done in the past when we were actually in the wrong. That's also the narrative. When we occupied Iraq, we were in the wrong. But in this case, where we would be in the right, we're just not going to do it because we're feckless. So there's this kind of propaganda that we'd like to counter, quite simply, and like to suggest something quite alternative to that. So I'm going to introduce my friends Sandra and Masha at this point, and ask you both to give just a very brief summary of who you are, what your standpoint is, and where you are currently, and how that specifically with regard to this topic, and then really get your thoughts on this this actuality that I've just mentioned at the top of the session. So over to you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. And a few things about where we are. We are right now in a very small Baltic country, Lithuania, which actually sometimes people don't even believe that that this country exists, because it's just 2.5 million people. And this country has a very strong opinion of what's happening, very open and very supportive towards Ukraine. As a result, a lot of Ukrainians found refuge here. So, and that's us as well as our family. We stayed in Ukraine until we realized that it's very dangerous for our family to be there because we have 2 kids, and kids needed to go to school. It's funny to say, but they wanted to go to school, and Ukrainian school was helped by Lithuanians to evacuate here in Vilnius. So here, our kids continue to go to Ukrainian school and learn all the same subjects that they had in Kharkov. Originally, we're from Kharkov, which is the first city on the border with Russia. So we probably border people. We're a Russian-speaking city. We know more about Russians than anybody else because this is our everyday relations. Most of our families are intermixed. So we have Russians and Ukrainians and tons of other nationalities, honestly. We're very cosmopolitan. We've been in a very cosmopolitan city, and most of the city didn't believe that the war is going to happen. This is an important message as well. We didn't think that that's going to happen. And then during first week when we still been there, and Amy talked to us at that point, probably it was day number 5, number 6, we still expected some very strong actions from the Western allies. And we thought that it's going to be over really quickly because the Western world will not allow that to continue for a long time. So we were constantly in this mode of, I have a, I have an older brother, or I have a neighbor who goes to the judo club, and this neighbor will come and shows you what we can do. So we were really believing in help. And then at some point, that was clear that it's not happening. We started to move. And at some point, we also realized that actually probably Ukraine might be left alone. And that was a point when we had to make a decision. And the decision that we take as the people who live in a peaceful place, and who still tend for our family, the decision is to support whoever is staying behind there to fight. We do it with money. We do it as a volunteering job. All of our friends are involved, buying cars, buying weapons, buying gear for soldiers. We have personal messages to the people who are at the front line constantly. I'm consulting, I have a soldier who I'm consulting as a psychologist. So we do anything possible to support people who stay there, even knowing that they might be the only people who defend the country and we're not going to have anybody else. It's also very important. And also what I want to say that we're becoming a masters of deciphering propaganda messages. So we're like, because we're constantly reading different sides and we see this crazy world that actually we live in parallel realities. It's a really scary notion, but we don't live in the same reality anymore. So Ukrainians live in the reality of the war, which is real, which is scary and killing tons of people. Russians live in a reality when there is no war. It's mind-blowing, but they don't think it's a war. They think it's a small military operation that is actually supported by the people from inside. Total bullshit, but here you go. This is their reality. Their reality is about scary Ukrainians who are Nazis, and our reality is about scary Russians who are Nazis. Also, you see like how strangely it's like collide. And then we have West, like huge and actually much more diversified as it seems, because we have Poland and Lithuania and Romania who are strongly supporting and giving tons of help. But we also have a strong allies like America, United Kingdom, and so France is a very strange position. It's taking very strange position for us. But anyways, we have these countries who are usually are associated with the strong military actions or big military power, military might. And from there, we don't have that much help. We hear some sympathizing words, like we sympathize with you, we know that Russians are bad, but there is not much else happening. Even though on our propaganda side, on Ukrainian propaganda side, there is constantly a narration that right now we're getting weapons. Well, not now, maybe in a week. Well, maybe not in a week, but in 2 weeks. We're constantly getting these weapons, but they're legendary. They're not coming. They're promised. So we have promises our hope is holding, like we're holding at these promises because our hope kind of stands on it. Not much happening there. So yet what's important in the message that Emmy quoted in this Guardian, that hopefully there will be a ceasefire. It's really hard to understand that after 2 months of the warfare, for a lot of Ukrainians who've been under bombs, it's still not the hopeful message, because ceasefire means what? Means that we are actually capitulating to Russia and we're becoming this satellite of this huge state. And we just end as the country, as a democracy, as people, we don't exist. The first reaction, we have 5 million people who already left the country and none of them would return. It's probably hard to understand. It's the crisis for Europe. We have 2.5 million only in Poland, 2.5, yeah. So it's like overstretching. It's overstretching. It's like we have tons of people who need help, tons of sick people who are right now somehow have to use the humanitarian structure of these European countries. So these people will not come back. More people will leave the country, much more. It will be millions of people running. Is Europe ready for another around 5-6 million people living immediately as soon as there will be this hopeful ceasefire? Yeah, because that's what it means. Ceasefire means that humanitarian corridors will be open and people will start to flee. Nobody talks about that. And the last thing, which is our Ukrainian propaganda side, is that our men who are fighting right now, our military forces, they are united more than ever, and they're not going to go anywhere, and they will fight till the last person. That's a sad truth, because there is no way for them to be in the captivity of Russia, because it's not only humiliating, it's actually, it's a sadistic army. It likes to torture people. So nobody wants to get there to be the prisoner of war. So nobody wants that. So this is the reality of our side, and we're not a small country. We live in a small country right now with 2.5 million people. We understand the difference. We have 40 million people. This is like whole Europe. It's like a huge number. It's a huge number. And yes,
Yeah,
I'll
anyways,
make a
it's
pause
just
here. Yeah,
it's
I'll
there's
relay to you.
my name is Sandro and I'm also from Kharkiv, and we're theater practitioners, we actors, and we teach theater and direct, etc., etc. And yeah, the question is, I mean, I agree with everything that Masha said. That covers the most of Amy's question, and I can just add that it's just even though there are negotiations still, like peace talks happening or something like this, like there's less and less and less people that actually believe or support them.
Yeah.
Because at this point we're just dealing with like a blatantly aggressive force that is really it's very clear, the purpose of which is very clear. And I don't think that negotiations are even possible in the end, or some kind of ceasefire, or that these peace talks will be fruitful. Like the only thing is just the collapse of this Soviet monster from the inside again. That is the only real outcome that Ukraine will settle for, pushing them back to the boundaries of before their invasion of Donbass and Crimea in 2014. At least.
Yeah, we knew that from the beginning that there is no outcome except Ukrainian victory for us. It never changed. We never thought about peace talks. It just was an official level. Obviously, we were hoping that they will at least decide on some noble actions, because there is no nobility from Russian side whatsoever. So right now there is nothing to expect except that they will lie, they will kill, they will deny that they killed, they will torture and rape, and then they will say that it never happened. So we're dealing with the enemy who never says anything straight. and that's it's a very painful thing, because it's like the more, again, talking about morale, how do you stay on the moral side if you have the enemy who doesn't have the notion of morale except lying about it every day, from the TV screens to the Russian populace, to the people there. It's a there is a, and about this realities, this parallel realities. So I heard a lot about NATO expanding, and the Russians are constantly, don't you see there is a danger, the NATO is expanding? And I constantly ask the very simple question, what is the NATO expanding means? First of all, they have a border with NATO for a long time. Lithuania is NATO. It's a border, it borders Belarus and Russia. Finland wants to be NATO really, really fast, and Sweden wants to be NATO. So they're going to be, they have NATO all around. Why us are the only danger? Isn't it strange that we are the only danger and we didn't even try to get to NATO that much? So this is really twisted thing. And one philosophical idea, if everybody's so afraid of NATO, that means that there are two forces, right? And NATO needs to be somehow stabilized or balanced with this other force. And now we see what this other force, what is it? It's actually Russia plus probably some Chinese politicians, or maybe like Chinese structure, like this force. And then we look at NATO and we look at this Asian conglomerate, like this huge thing that is actually going at us. And we're like, yeah, it's better to be with NATO. It's just natural. It's just like, run away to somebody. They might not be a good guys. You look at them and you're like, oh, right, I don't like you and I don't like you. But if you promise to give us some shelter from this monster, maybe we'll accept it. We're on the borderline that we have to take sides. We have to take sides. And now nobody's taking our side, except the countries who helping the refugees a lot right now. I feel like here we definitely surrounded by support, and so many people here in Lithuania saying the same, like, we're going to come back and help you to build up the country. Like, we'll come. The architects are working on the plan for our home city, for Kharkiv, because it's literally destroyed. Like, there are no places to come back. There are no places to work. It's all in ruins. But people here are constantly saying, don't worry, all together, we're going to come and build it up. This is normal and like healthy message of support. To say that the only hope for you to survive is to give up to Russia is so scary. It's like, it's just the side is taken. The side is taken. So that Russia is the strongest, the biggest, the scariest, and we all have to shiver and say that we can't do a thing about this monster.
Yeah,
that's opinion. That's an opinion.
Yeah, well, and just for those who joined after we began recording, just to say, this is a session where we really invite opinion. So we have opinions and we invite opinion. It's not a situation where we're going to get into sort of annihilating debate with each other, but we do welcome people to take position, because this is what we're advocating. We're actually advocating people do take position of some sort, rather than being caught in this form of spectatorship, which is particularly enervating. So what you've brought up, Sandra and Masha, already is if we're looking at this as dramaturgy, which we're sort of looking at this spectacle as dramaturgy. You've brought up already what the possible consequences in this play might be. Either we're going to see the Ukraine victorious, and we're going to see essentially what I think people predict is going to be the end of Putin's regime, because he can't broke that kind of humiliation if he's pushed back to the borders, and he can't be seen to have won. At any rate, we'll see some kind of victorious Ukraine, or we see Ukraine absolutely crushed, because as you've pointed out, the Ukrainians are going to fight to the very last fighter. It's not a proxy war in the sense that nobody's making you fight. This is another aspect of the rhetoric we wanted to look at. This notion that the Ukrainians are fighting a proxy war for the nasty NATO allies. It's not a proxy war, can't be, if Ukrainians are actually going to fight to the last fighter. What's the meaning of proxy in that case? So that's the outcomes are very clear. there's a sort of either this or that, which is
Well,
intimate. Yeah, go on. Mhm.
we, yes, we've been feeling, it's a strange phrase, but maybe, and I heard this here as well. We are hired by the whole Europe to deal with Russia. So when they say thank you to us, first it was every time it would come to me as a shock, but they would say thank you for what you're doing there, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you fighting so we don't have to fight, or you fighting so we can, when we join, it's definitely going to be the fight till the end. So it's also this country would not exist on the border with Russia. If Ukraine, for instance, is swallowed up by Russia and Russia moves to the Lithuanian border even more, this country won't exist. It will be the next one, and Latvia will be the next one, and Estonia will be the next one. And they are so small that you can kind of ignore them on a bigger scale of the humanity and the globe. But in the form of the dramaturgy, it will, again, it will mean that the drama is happening. It's unfolding in a tragic dimension more and more and more, and it will make the rest of the population, I think, more and more depressed, because it's like we go to the movies to see that the evil is punished and the goodness wins. The whole Hollywood build is built on that, and all of a sudden we want to destroy this very like basic of Western civilization. Like it's incredible. It's like a Jesus Christ story also doesn't make any sense after that, because right now we're a little bit in this situation when the country can be destroyed till the last brick, but then because the world will help and because this country will win, it's going to come up, and that's what we're living with. Yeah, when I'm looking at the favorite, my like not only favorite, like the buildings that I know intimately well because I worked and lived there in Kharkiv, and I know that they destroyed. I save myself and my spirit by saying, we'll come back and there will be so much help, and there will be financial help and human help, and we will build it even more beautiful. And in that way, I'm still in a Hollywood movie, right? In a myth. Yeah, I'm in a myth about prevailing over evil. And obviously, it's like if we talk propaganda, I want to stay on this side of propaganda. I want to stay on the prevailing, yeah, not an idea that if you have the real monster, if you have really ruthless tyrant, then everybody would fall. Very often I think that's what happened to Russia. That's why Russian people are so strange, because that's what they accepted. They accepted their helplessness. They accepted the fact that they can't do anything. And the opposite is just to support Putin. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you for putting such a fine point on it, which is actually the topic for this session was going to be subtitled Moral Suffering, the suffering of the spectator when the play is going, in a sense, it does not have the ending that would bring a catharsis. The results are kind of moral suffering. Peter, I'd like to now, so remember please that for the first 45 minutes you are recorded, and for the second 45 minutes you won't be recorded. So if you would like to hold your remarks till afterwards, that's absolutely fine. Peter, I'd like to ask you to unmute yourself. Yeah, great.
Yeah, so you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought also, since you were saying from the beginning, it has to be interactive and we can share our opinions freely. And now that you've come to this point of the moral witnessing and the suffering that comes with it, I've been following how it all unfolded, this invasion and war from the very beginning. And since I lived in Turkey before, a lot of the things that I experienced over there came back to me. I saw a lot of similarities, and of course it didn't get to that part. That Turkey would, they did invade in Syria, but they somehow always get it under control. But it came with a lot of, as you were saying, trauma, and every day something new happened. It was just a roller coaster of emotions constantly. Actually, since 2013, which was the Gezi protests, up until the coup in 2016, this has been the case, and it only increased. So I just wanted to ask, since that is my experience, and when I see what's unfolding now, I read it on Twitter. I even made a TikTok account to see what's going on, you know, how people communicate about it, and also the propaganda, obviously, from both sides. I mean, I do get a sense, you know, I do also read the Guardian, but I also follow the German news and the Flemish news and the Dutch news. And so I constantly compare all of that. So I do have the sense that although the Western media are go along with a certain Ukrainian narrative, that that the truth seems more on our side than on the side of what the Russians are getting on their media, state televisions, and I know that they also follow it through Telegraph or whatever they use to get some other views, but there is a lot of doubt. So I just wonder, you know, how to deal with that. Yeah, with that sorrow that we feel, the empathy, the solidarity that we feel for the people in Ukraine, and actually, in a way, also for Russians. To be honest, I mean, I also saw that there is a Russian ballet company now touring, and there was an item on television, and they were saying half of the company is actually, once they're here, asking also for asylum in Germany. So it's it's not just the Ukrainians; it's a lot of Russians too who are also fleeing the country. So and artists, you know, who have that network, you know, and yeah, I'm not sure if this is coming to a question, but you know, how can we deal with the anxiety and the trauma that is created, not just, yeah, I mean, for all of us, but especially, of course, for the Ukrainians in the first place, and for the people who do make it to, let's say, Germany, where I am right now, and what can we do to help? I think that's the first question. And yeah, since I'm also working on exile, I'm wondering, you know, are there now established routes of exile? And do you have any knowledge about that?
The rules of exile, you mean how people
yeah.
leave the country, how the
Yeah,
ways
exactly.
refugees?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Mostly all the border around Western Ukraine are open. So Ukrainians can go to Moldova, Romania, Poland. Yeah, and Poland, right? Belarus is completely closed. It's off the map for us. But
Hungary is not very friendly.
Hungary is not friendly. Yeah, unfortunately, but they let people in, but and there are organizations that help people inside. But as on the governmental level, yeah, it's not a friendly country. And there are people who go, a lot of people who go to Turkey, so they get to the airport base in Poland or Romania, and then they fly. A lot of people went to Bulgaria. Now there is huge amounts that went to Ireland because Ireland gave the most favorable conditions for refugees from Ukraine. So it seems like even if we take our close friends or the people who we worked with in the art circle, the geography is super wide. Like we're like everywhere. Which again, you said how to deal with anxiety, and we do have a huge. We're very tired. I think this is the feeling that we feel. At least I feel every morning when I wake up, and I'm afraid to ask what's next. So the morning moment is so painful because you don't know what happened. You don't know how many people again been bombed the previous night and early in the morning. And that's the news that and if the big bomb has already exploded or not. But and this is a painful moment in the morning, and there is always a hope, like maybe maybe something happened and maybe the Kremlin is on fire. Maybe maybe we constantly have this winning movement towards the Russian border, which is actually happening, but in very small sections. Like Kharkov right now has the Russian troops being thrown 40 kilometers from the city, and this is with the huge destruction around. But it's always like, okay, so this is the good news in the morning, but we'll take that, and this is the bad news. I'll think about it maybe a little bit later. So that part of the anxiety of spectator, but what really saves us is a constant action. So we're doing the performance right now about the war, and we're going to show it on 8th of March. We're helping the fundraiser for the rehabilitation center after the war is ended. So it's a psychological center which will help our soldiers to become normal, peaceful people again, because that's what they will need. And we're preparing this thing again. That's because we don't doubt that we have to win. And that's what saves us from this, from despair, right? So action, action, action. We know quite a few of people who stopped sleeping, basically. I mean, they sleep like 5 hours, 6 hours, because they constantly do something. That's the only recipe. Yeah.
I think, that we do realize that this is a war, and during war, people fight, like it's very simple, like in a way, it's more simple when you're on the front line, and
somehow, yes.
you have an enemy who's trying to kill you, and you are doing everything to evade that and kill that enemy. It's
Primitive
very,
meaning, yeah,
very, very kind of direct. You have no questions, whether to this or that. You stepped in, yes, there's a certain amount of fear, but you're acting against it or with it. It's interesting, Amy, with the name for this. You named it as a spectators, but here it's a bit of all-inclusive, right? The spectator can participate
Yes.
in many different ways, whether it's raising attention to the issue or donating directly to a cause, helping somebody be evacuated, helping someone to be fed or housed. So I think this path is what makes helps with anxiety, because you're directly fighting, you're directly contributing to one side or the other side. I mean, actually, by not doing anything, you're probably contributing to the other side.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's also a thought
And
that comes to
I
mind.
wanted to address this moment of Russian, Russophobia, that the fear of Russians or the hate for Russians that is really happening some places in Europe. When the war just started, we decided that our main job is to write a personal letter to every person in Russia who we know. And then we sat down and wrote personal letters to all the politicians in Russia who had some sort of an open account, like democratic ones. And we did it up to the point of Bucha. And I think that was a very breaking point for us, because we realized that the Russians can't do anything. And that was losing the hope in this respect. Like, we understood that the only thing they have is to run away. And that's exactly what they're doing. Not quite. Yesterday, I saw this, you sent me this beautiful picture of a young man who thrown the cocktail, Molotov's cocktail in the, where was it, this building? Avtozak. Yeah, to the place where they take the soldiers to send them to Ukraine.
No.
Avtozak?
Well, Avtozak
Yeah.
for demonstrations.
Oh, he was. So basically, there are underground fighters in Russia, and they are doing small things right now, but they do something, and that's where where our heart goes to these people, and all of them are, God, philosophers, writers, artists. So like all the artistic people who are all of a sudden trying to be clandestine and partisan in their own country. This is, we tried to invite Ivan Veropayev for this meeting. He said that his heart is with us, but he doesn't speak English, so he couldn't join because of that. But he cannot, he left Russia in 2011, and he's one of the person who cannot come back because for his anti-Putin's remarks. And he's helping people all the time. He's like working, and he's helping Russians. He's the one who organized a little chain of help for actors who escaping Russia, and nobody wants them. Like they've got into this stigma. But I must say, it's very hard to be sympathetic. I mean, I love those people, but I constantly feel like, it's this, like you should not be there. But there is big sympathy. I read the court the court address that this young girl did. She's 21, and she did this beautiful, eloquent address to the court in Russia, who sentenced her to 5 years in prison. This is amazing. They're really young people. So we don't think that Russia needs to be like, bombed till the empty oblivion. We think that there are people who are just like us. We don't forget this fact. But I'm coming to the point. We are feeling that even though we are bombed and killed and tortured, we have it easier on the moral side and on the side of psyche, because we are in a clear place. We're fighting with evil. They are hunted by the guilt constantly. And they talk about it, they write about it, they have this huge guilt and huge shame because they are right now part of the monster. So that's where it's easier for Ukrainians than for Russians. It's true. That's where we are like on that subtle level. Did I answer a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I also wanted to ask now, if I may. I don't want to, suck up all the air in the room here, but I think part of the anxiety that I feel from my side is that there is a lot of unknown. And so we were talking about these dramaturgies. I find it a little bit sometimes weird to speak of dramaturgies in these regards, but I follow a lot of the dramaturgy that Zelensky basically creates. And, of course, afterwards we can look at the whole events again in terms of a dramaturgy, but to say it right now is a little bit tricky ethically, I think. But there's a lot of unknown, and the more I try to read, the more I realize that there's so much unknown, and that creates the anxiety. Like, for instance, what happens with the people who flee to Russia? I mean, there's also lots of stories. I don't know how to take them, where people are, just disappear or are also maybe held captive. Or people who really who give over to the Russian forces because thinking, in the end we are brothers, and then get killed as well. So how to take that information, or is it propaganda? That is also what I actually want to hear, like to know. But I'm sure that this is not possible right now.
Yeah, very difficult.
Yeah, we're in such a scary time. 21st century is a century of conspiracies. So we're getting doubtful about anything. Yeah, we're in an era of deep fakes, which is what Black Mirror warned us about that some times ago, but that's already happening. There is an organization that is constantly, every day, it's debunking the fake news. It just has the listing of if you saw this particular newsreel, that newsreel is fabricated, or it's been already on the internet for 5 years. Yeah, I understand that. This is the murky waters. We live not in the clean waters, but in the really murky waters. We have no idea what's really happening, because there are constantly I don't know who they are. agencies creating stuff. Yeah, creative agencies. Again, we say them. And for pure drama, this is some sort of a new characters. Yeah, it is something new. We don't yet know how to deal with the thing that you can't believe anything. And again, for us, it's easier because we know live people and we know places and we've been there. It's not just taking the message, taking the information from the screen. We have it in our life. So that is easier. But I imagine another country somewhere, and I'm the spectator, and I only see it on the screen. How do I judge what is really happening if I'm constantly being lied to? That's a thing. That's more about Russians than about us, but not only about Russians. We do have people who listen to Russian propaganda, older generation. It's like that our parents, at least my parents, they listen to Russian propaganda. This is closer to them, to their structure. They are Soviet people. So the Soviet people, they still listen to Russian propaganda because Russia for them is like a continuation of Soviet Union. And we are breakouts. We're different. So we do have different sources of information even, we constantly argue about that. But yeah,
Well,
it's one of the scariest moments in that.
the thing that's unmistakable is to have a missile, a Russian missile, land, smash into the house next to you, and have artillery fire, shaking the house where you live, which has happened to us. And at that moment, it's like, you get
So
this
clear.
crystal clear picture of what it is that they are, basically, And then, when somebody comes at you with such inhuman aggression, it's not a
Yeah.
guy running at you with a knife who's like, oh shit, he's drunk or he's pissed off or he's whatever, something can happen. But it's like, it's transpersonal aggression of an enormous proportion. I will believe that, yes, it can torture people, it can steal people, it can brainwash people, because it doesn't care. It's all part of this, I don't know, of this dominating power or force, or this greed for more, kind of, it's a, you can't really put a face on it. I think that's why a lot of ancients, they had different gods and deities that stood in the front of the army or represented these forces, because it's not a very human proportion. So
Yeah, it's not very human in general.
the intuitive feeling that you get from being, in a war zone is that you don't matter as a human being.
Yes.
First of all, nobody, so that, nobody takes you into account. There's no like regular laws or structures of society that work. It's really moment to moment, person to person. Like, you see somebody in the street and he's got a tank of gas and you don't, or vice versa. And we had people, we went to the shop and stuff like this, and there was just a bunch of guys, and like there's really little food left on the shelves. And we go in there and we get something, like a couple of eggs, and like they didn't know, there's no bread, there's no dairy, it's just like products that can be, like mivina, whatever.
Kept for a long time.
So we got some stuff, and we come out, and this guy comes up with a knife, and he's like blah 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 blah. And we were a couple of guys, so of course, we told him to go screw himself, etc., etc. But so there's like little instances like that to soldiers who are like to Russian soldiers who would see like some Ukrainian soldiers in the basement who would be like, okay, we're wounded and we're ready to surrender, and they just throw the grenade in there and keep going. So yeah, that's
scary what happens to people, what they become when the war is happening. But again, there are always two sides. Some people become immensely good. Some people become like really angelic, and some people go into darkness to maximum. This is true.
I just wanted to, go on.
Yeah, I wanted to say that funny enough, it's for our conversation. I used to be a pacifist. I actually, all my life, I was fighting against wars. It's like my personal, very principled position. And I never knew that I'm actually going to be saying the words that we have to continue fighting. Like this, I never could imagine that this phrase would make sense to me, because I was on the side that constantly said, no, look at the cost of life. Like, look how many people are, look how many people died. Look at the kids who are suffering. Look at all the trauma. And since I'm a psychologist, I know about trauma, like especially collective trauma, so much. So I was the person who's saying, if the war can end now, it should, and then we'll decide what to do. And it's amazing for me how this event in my personal life and this war just twisted something in my brain. And I'm like, I'm not that I'm ashamed, but all of a sudden I understand that there are things that are so important. They are so important for everybody that, yes, unless the war is fought to the end, it doesn't make sense. Like it just stops making sense.
Mikhail, I'm gonna call on you just 1 second. I just wanted to speak to something you said about direct experience, because you say when you have direct experience of something, it clarifies things and you become very simple. I just want to say that from my point of view as a binational, I participated in anti-Brexit marches. The penny had actually dropped that we had been hacked, that there was definitely foreign involvement in the British press to promote Brexit. There was absolutely, that the penny had dropped. And the feeling of having been hacked, of having an act of self-harm forced on you was very visceral. And when we participated in the anti-Brexit marches, it was very, very visceral. In the United States, I'm a binational. The feeling about Trump was that we'd been hacked. It was a very direct experience. We hated him with the hatred you feel towards the Trojan horse. It was, or the Manchurian candidate. We hated him with that directness. It's strange to me that we're not connecting the dots, that the people that I see marching in Australia and in Britain and in the United States are Ukrainian Americans, Ukrainian Australians, Ukrainian British. Why are we not marching? This is my question. I mean, you talk about moral anguish and the solution being some kind of state taking of position, some kind of action, some kind of activation. I think we have to connect the dots of what we're actually looking at. We have to take position. It's not just Ukraine. Ukraine is a phenomena in a more general situation, as you say. There are powers at play here. There are powers. So I wanted to say that. Mikhail, please speak. And by the way, would you like to speak on the record or off the record? Because we are at the time now when we would stop recording. Any decision about that? Should we continue recording and then we'll stop afterwards?
No. Hi. Either way, it doesn't matter to me. I'm quite fine.
For a second.
Quite fine with recording as well. First of all, let me say hi to my old friends. Привет. As a matter of introduction, and I'm talking from Chicago. So my best sympathy to that part of your doom nationality. Yes, we were hacked. Yes, we were mad. And we're still mad and we're still being hacked. Okay, on that part. And I'm originally from Moscow. Pardon me, sorry. And another full disclosure, and I'm sorry to say that I'm kind of a professional spectator. I used to be a theater critic way back, a little bit in this vein as well now, but mostly film critic and mostly in this strange kind of film and theater, puppetry and animation. So, and as a professional spectator, I cannot help but looking at this as really a drama or rather a spectacle, a double, triple, I don't know how many fold spectacle. It's kind of cynical to say, but if we're talking this kind of talk, if we're taking this kind of approach angle, then yeah, guys, I can hardly imagine how did you survive over there and how people are surviving. But to add to this discussion, to this talk, I must go a little bit aside. And I must confess, I'm ashamed to admit that my heart goes not only to Ukrainians, but to my Russian friends from my Moscow circle as well. And my Moscow circle is being emptied day by day, hour by hour. Almost no one left of my friends, of my circle, professional and personal and all the rest. And here is one story, just one snippet and some other snippets maybe. So I'm deep into animation community over there, as you probably remember and know. So I know everyone over there and many of the international community as well. And to the owner of that community, I must tell that, what do you think, how many signatures were at this very first, statements of support and protest, etc., within this professional circle? Around 1,000. So that's not only it's not only the sort of a creative circle, that's almost the entire industry. I'm sorry. It's almost the entire industry. Amazing. And they've done some protest films and they're being screened now at the festivals right now, this month, last month, alongside with Ukrainian sort of collections of the same sort of ontology kind, which is amazing, given on the talks and events about canceling Russian culture, etc., which is also taking place here and there. But anyway, so one of the guys, animator from St. Petersburg, probably with some Ukrainian roots, but who cares? Everyone has some Ukrainian roots in that land. Almost everyone. He left just like an impulse within the first maybe couple of weeks with his family to nowhere. So his first stop was Istanbul, of course, as to many of them, where planes are going. So, and he puts on his Facebook his first night in Istanbul. You know, guys, I just left my folks, my family, kids in the hotel room and went to the nearest sort of, I don't know, snacks stand or whatever store to get some water or maybe some bagel, whatever. And they have a TV on the wall. I've been watching for 5 or 7 minutes. My legs were giving up on me. My legs let go. I could not stand. So that's about the spectacle and the show. Over there, when internet and all the Facebooks and YouTubes were still active, were still not forbidden fruits completely. They were not exposed, at least not to the needed degree, just to the visuals, just to the spectacle. And that made the whole thing, because that guy was absolutely from our crowd. No convincing should be made, you know, nothing. But he wasn't exposed to that, as simple as this. So there are really two different worlds, and all the pictures posted here and there probably doesn't, they don't help that much. I'm still thinking about that. And I'm thinking about some other things. That's since I'm now more or less a film scholar and critic, not that much a theatrical one, but in the age of the World Wide Web, it doesn't really matter because for at least during the last 2 years we were taking our theater impressions, if you will, through the same computer screen anyway, right? So, and that's a dramaturgy of strange scale. I'm looking at some pictures from Ukraine on my Facebook feed or elsewhere, and I'm looking at a sort of a cultural scholar, and it's hard to explain to anyone from outside that realm, the badlands, as an Applebaum called them, you know, the Central Europe lands, etc. I'm looking at this multi-layered archaeology of culture, of civilization being pulped up. Say one picture, I guess from the vicinity of Kharkiv, or maybe in Donetsk, or maybe over there, maybe a month ago, not right now, but still, imagine an absolutely ruined field, some formerly meadow, maybe, I don't know, a park, a public park probably, absolutely destroyed with rusty metal here and there, with some remains of the tank still burning, some buildings just around this place, a little bit further away, and in the center, just neighboring this burned tank, that's the statue which you must be familiar with it quite well. The World War II Great Patriotic War era tank TS-34 on the pedestal, right? As a monument of glory of that victory, right in the center of this battlefield, right in the center of this destroyed park or whatever it was. So, you know, all the historical, civilizational, cultural layers are being smitten into the pulp altogether. And that's one of the greatest symbolic pictures I was seeing all this time. Sorry, yes, I do have all my, gut reactions to the burning buildings of Kharkov and all the rest, but that was something absolutely revealing the deep absurdity of this, deep kind of a theater of absurd. Beckett might, wait somewhere in the wings. Nothing could be compared to all this. And the last thing, sorry if I'm talking too long, maybe another second. The drama of spectatorship is here. And it's not only a moral pain. Yes, for the first months, I must confess, I'm not alone. I couldn't do anything. It was such a trauma of being even a side spectator. I couldn't do much in Chicago, suburb, except giving me a little money, what I have here and there. Nothing more or less, right? But we were just thrown out of the existence. Now it's becoming a routine. We're coming back to this and that, and we have our obligations. And in my case, it's a spectatorship obligations, right? Like a couple of weeks into this disaster, I'm talking through Zoom with my Polish colleague, critic, animation critic, and we were just both in a state of shock, and she's already in all this refugee crisis in her Krakow, helping people just handily, tangibly, unlike me. So, and she throws a phrase, you know what, our job, common to all of us, is kind of a decadent now. What the hell to go and look at, go and watch some animation stuff, some arty pictures, arty shots. It's kind of a decadent occupation right now. Yeah, we both share this feeling, but still, she goes to her festival in Vienna. I go to my obligations through Zoom to Brussels, and we're watching our festivals. What else can we do? But we decided both at that conversation. I'm actually doing it as a preamble to any of the writings I'm doing right now, to each and every one of them. We have to find as a moral justification the relevance to the moment in what we are watching, in what we are accepting into and trying to reflect upon. Just the relevance, just the sheer physical, I don't know, not even moral, just thematic relevance. I don't know what, any kind of relevance. Right now, I have to watch through Oberhausen Festival and Stuttgart Festival, etc., etc. Yeah, I do watch some relevant, I can catch some relevant things over there. But that's the trauma of the culture inside this drama. What else is left which can compete or coexist or somehow bring some light into this kind of spectacle we're suddenly exposed to? Spectacles. Is it the end of culture? Is it the old discussion? Where is all the art? To just, can we write poetry after Auschwitz? But what about during Auschwitz? Not after. It's not that, Adorno question. It's a little bit different one. During, and it could be a long duration. So that's my spectatorship, trauma, and that's my contribution to your, if it is a contribution to your drama discussion.
Thank you, Mikhail. I really appreciate that, your remarks. And I think at this point, we'll stop the recording. Falguni,